Hi everyone, my name is Chelsea MacPhail. I would not call this a recent submission or a recent session. This is probably from about 6 weeks ago, and I'll explain a little bit about why it's taking me a while to send you guys a submission of Tia. So I guess I'll start off. Tia is a 11-year-old Holsteiner Thoroughbred. I got her when she was 4 from the breeder. So she has really had all of her training with me, which has been good because I did not ask a whole lot of her for a very long time. I've been doing art to ride with her for about, I want to say 4 years ago. I sent a submission into Will for one of his first video critiques when he was offering a scholarship. And that was back when we were in North Carolina. So we've been doing this for quite a while, but Tia has had some ups and downs. Most recently, and the reason you guys probably have not seen much video from us at all, really in the past, almost 9 months now, is that she ended up with a pretty serious suspensory injury to her front left limb. When it was first diagnosed, we couldn't even trot her off because she was so lame that when the vet palpated her leg, she just was in so much pain. He's like, we're not even going to try to trot her off. So she was very lame, and the vet didn't really have a good prognosis for her. We've been very lucky. She has come back much faster. I think she kind of surprised our vet. Because he did not expect her to, I'm not even sure he expected her to make a full recovery. And she's been doing really great. We are back in the saddle. She initially was injured at the very beginning of March. I was able to get back on her around 4th of July, and we're actually trotting now. However, this video is just work in hand and then some riding at the walk. We cannot lunge, which has been fine. We've been doing lots of work in hand. For her, pretty much since day one, she's been doing 2 sessions of work in hand a day. It's been so helpful for her because she was always a little bit tense. And we did a lot of work in hand, but I would also lunge her. I would also ride her. So spending a couple months just in hand has been really beneficial. She has lost a bit of weight. She's lost quite a bit of conditioning and muscling. She's not a horse that takes kindly to being in her stall all the time. So even though she was supposed to be, we still had to turn her out, and we did cut her grain back, and she needs quite a bit of groceries to keep her at a good weight. So that's something that may be a little bit visible to you guys who have seen her in some of our sessions together. For me, what I noticed the most is, the lack of strength behind the saddle. She looks like she's kind of developed this hunter's bump look. You can see it quite clearly there. So that's what we've been focused on, helping her regain strength slowly and still with lots of in-hand work. She's been doing 2 sessions of either a riding session or a walking session a day. And some days I actually go 3 times for her rehab. But lots of just controlled walking has been really helpful. I did not stay away from doing some small circles to help her stretch from the very beginning. If she was hollow, I would bring her on to maybe a 15-meter circle to help her get back into the stretch. And I did most everything pretty consistently with our work in hand, except for smaller circles and asking for a bit of lateral work. So this is literally this part is what we've been doing since day one for her coming back into work, even when, basically as soon as we got the inflammation and the swelling down, and she seemed pretty, she wasn't, acutely lame, we were doing the walking in hand, and so she was doing this work in hand. It's been really great for her. I find that she is much more consistent stretching. It's also interesting, right before she got injured, I had an osteopath come out and work on her, and I said, she's really difficult going to the right. She's much more flexible going left. And she had a session and like her right side just got so loose. And now I think it's pretty obvious. She's much better going right now. She's very flexible this direction. She really reaches all the way down and forward with her nose and stays there consistently. So I am very happy about that. My hope is to have the osteopath out again soon to do a session for her, but we've had so many other vet appointments that I have put that off for a little while. So I'm excited to have her back in work. She still has her days where she's a bit distracted, but as you can see, like overall, I think she's much more consistent stretching than she ever was before. So I guess in some ways this has been a blessing for us. Yeah, so I didn't do the lateral work with her in hand just because I knew we were kind of, basically the vet wanted her taking like small steps in a straight line. That was his goal for her. She doesn't do that. Like I said, we did have to turn her out, and she wasn't very good about that. She would give us heart attacks on some days because she'd just go out and be wild. But we did our best, and I didn't want to ask that of her in hand or under saddle. So at this point, this was actually just before we were about to start our trot work. So she had been under saddle at the walk for about a month. So I was starting to get to the point where I was asking her for a little bit more. We would do a little bit of leg yield, a little bit of shoulder in. We were playing with it again. One thing that's been incredible. So we have the Peter Harobin saddle now, which is awesome. I took the measurements for her in January. We got it pretty much like a week after she got injured, which was very disappointing, but I was still excited to have it. So one of the things I've noticed with this saddle, and then also just not having the other saddle that didn't fit her very well on her back, is that you can see there's like it's not as obvious now that she's on the other side, but I'll point it out again when she comes around. There's a muscle that looks like it's right in front of the withers, and it comes pretty much like along the upper part of the neck. And it's been really interesting to see how much this single muscle that I've noticed it develop. You can see when she's stretched just how much it's working. And for her, she did have kind of like a dip in front of her withers where she wasn't very developed there. We found that her old saddle was, really pinching. It was too tight. It came up too high. There was too much contact like towards her withers, and it was kind of restricting that muscle. But that same muscle is also it's associated with the one just in front of the withers as well. So it's interesting to see as we've allowed her to develop and get stronger without that other saddle on, and with this saddle giving her the movement she needs. You can see it right there. It kind of pops. It's interesting to see that come and become more visible. So it's definitely exciting to have the new saddle because I know, I've seen how much better she goes and how much happier she is to stretch now that she can kind of use her back the way that's most comfortable. With the work in hand here, she's gotten pretty good at it. So I don't have to do a whole lot. I just try, hold on. To keep the contact really consistent, I use the circle mostly to try to place that inside hind leg more underneath her body and ask it to take a nice big step to kind of help her really reach underneath her and like support that back so that she really gets used to using her hind legs, pushing, and also eventually what we want is for that, her hind legs to take more weight so that she can eventually collect. So I don't do as much, like before I used to be a little bit more, really focusing on taking more contact and asking her to go forward. And now I try to use those circles more to help me shift that inside hind underneath her. And as long as I have her active, she pretty much consistently just falls back into that stretch easily. She's just been really relaxed, which has been wonderful. When I try to keep her in the stretch, I obviously think about keeping the contact really light. And you can see me here bringing my hands up a little bit as she picks her head up a little bit and just asking her to stay forward. She's a she's become very uneven, which is, isn't too surprising. Most horses are, it's a little bit easier for them to go one way or the other. Her unevenness kind of flip-flopped. It used to be really easy for her to go left. Now going right seems to feel a little bit more comfortable for her. But, I just try to keep the contact even on both reins. I don't try to fuss with the bend so much. I'm just asking her to stay really consistent in the contact. And, the idea is that through these exercises of leg yielding, shoulder forward, shoulder in, we start to help them to become a little bit straighter. So that used to be something that I worried about a lot. Do I have a good enough inside bend? And now, I just really try to focus on straightness. So you can see that muscle pop there again as she comes across that diagonal. That's just really across her top line, right, that starts in front of the withers. I don't know. I guess I'm a little obsessed about it, but I think it's exciting to see that development because, where I haven't seen it as much is really, behind the saddle. And like I said, that area where it looks a little hunter's bumpy is obviously, for me, concerned because back strength is so important for horses, and it's what helps keep them, healthy and going. I certainly, I'm very aware of the fact that hollow back can, consistently hollow back is going to potentially lead to, issues in the back such as kissing spine, which is something we want to stay away from. But, with this kind of work, the more she does it, and, she's really just in this video started under saddle again. So everything, she's been, even before when I didn't have my saddle, I had stopped riding with it. So she hadn't been under saddle since the end of January. So she went a good 6 months without anyone on her back. And there's certain muscles that the horses develop from us sitting on them as well. So just me having that weight on her back is going to, create a little bit more difficulty for her. So, we're taking our time and strengthening all of that and helping her be happy in her work and come back and enjoy it. She's always had a great walk. She, consistently kind of overtracks. She's pretty active. There's kind of one moment in this video that I was not happy with what I did. Because what happened was, and I'll show you guys when it happens, but she's a little bit behind the leg most of the time. Really keeping her active in the walk and in the stretch. I tend to do too much. Like you can see my leg moving there quite a bit, kind of like, nudge, nudge, nudge. And I'd like for her to be a little bit more, self-sufficient. And that's really my own, problem to fix. I need to not use my legs so much and make sure that she's a little bit not so dull to it. But, I sent her forward off my leg and I knew she wasn't supposed to be trying at this point. And so I basically, pulled her up, which is obviously not something that we want because if I ask with my leg and she goes forward, anything forward, really should be rewarded. That's what I was looking for. So there's a few moments where I kind of really start to, ask her with my leg, come on, go forward. And that's, the reason we're not lunging. And the reason I, am not asking so much of her is because I don't, obviously her cantering forward would be very problematic considering where we are with her rehab. But this is a pretty active walk. I'm happy with it. She's easily stepping over the front tracks of her feet, which, to me shows that she's engaged, she's using her hind end, and she's pushing well. And she's clearly showing a nice stretch. So this is all, stuff that I'm very happy with. You can see that muscle there. Pop, pop. So, I think the fun part of developing horses this way is that you do get to see how much their body changes over time. And, if you go back and look at, probably our last submission, she was quite strong and her body, she was really muscular. She didn't look so much like a thoroughbred. She looked much more like a warm blood. And at this point you can see she looks kind of thin, a little gangly looking there. So it's interesting to look back on pictures of when she was very well developed because I know we can obviously do that all again. And it won't take so much time because she is very correct in the way she's working now. She's happy to stay in the stretch. She's not quite so distracted anymore. So that will all happen just even a little bit faster this time. One of the things I have noticed, and I will get you guys a more recent video because it's exciting. She's almost up to 30 minutes of trot work now, which means we're going to be able to start cantering here in a few weeks. So I'm excited to show you guys where she is now. You can see here, I've been bringing her, in and out of more of a working connection, and she actually does it quite well. I was surprised because, like I said, at this point, she wasn't trotting. She'd only been under saddle again for a month, but the idea is that we play with this, like, where you can see she kind of starts to come a little bit behind the vertical, but she maintains that well. She's active there. She's, asking like, hey, this is hard. So I let her back out a little bit. But that's how we figure out if they're ready. We try, we bring them up a little bit, we see. And for her, she's actually able to do a little bit of, working walk. And it's not bad. She's not coming behind the vertical. She's not, really coming behind my legs. She's still active. So we were playing with this at this point. And we are playing with it in the trot as well. We spent probably a good month really just in the long stretch. And then I started playing with bringing her up a little bit and making sure, we weren't losing the bounce feeling where she's really springy off her legs and like really pushing me out of the saddle, that she's still, covering ground, and we're not losing the track up where she's able to still step up into those front prints, with her hind legs. So everything, has been going well. So we try a little bit. And when I feel like if she gets heavy in my hand or she really starts sucking back, I just let her back out again. And let her get comfortable, let all those muscles that she was working there kind of, breathe and flow and get some blood back into them so that they have the nutrients they need to try again. So, it's very much like bodybuilding, like lifting weights. We can't just kind of like contract our muscles forever. We have to let them breathe and then try again. So you can see I let her out there for a little bit, and then brought her back up to see how the working walk was looking in this direction, which is probably a little bit short for her right there. I think she'd probably be a little bit more comfortable if I'd give her a little bit more rein, which we'll see how she reacts to that, because this session is so long ago. It's like I'm watching it again for the first time. So, I want to see her still using her top line, still staying in front of the vertical. That right there looks nice. The biggest thing is I want to make sure she's not hollowing. The more time we spend with them in the stretch, the more they're developing the right muscles. So, that's why it's important to try it. But if it's not working, go back to what they already do really well. Like if you're getting on, and if I wasn't able to get a nice stretch for her from the beginning, I wouldn't have gone back on. Even if the vet was like, yeah, she's ready to go back. I would have done more work in hand, because it's not going to be beneficial for her to go around hollow. She's going to use the wrong muscles. She's going to strain her body in a way that's going to, potentially lead to injury. And she was already injured. So that's the last thing that I wanted to do. So I played with that a little bit. And then you can see here, I let her all the way back out, let her stretch. You can see me kind of being like, come on, let's go. And then there, like that was a more minor example of what I'll show you later. But that is what I would like to fix. And it was just, that's me and my fear of like, I know, excuse me, I know she's not supposed to be trotting. So you could see I did pull her back there and say like, no, that's not exactly what I meant. In the sessions now, and like I said, I'll do one soon. If she goes forward, and even if she gives me a little canter, I don't care. Like it's, I want to promote that forward thinking because I want her to be forward thinking. So yeah, I wasn't super happy with that, but I was very conscious even during this video. I was like, oh shoot, I can't believe I did that. Sometimes she is pretty dull, so, I can give her a little kick and not a whole lot happens. And it just depends. Sometimes I do, and she's more reactive. And, I was asking a little bit more than I wish I had, because I would, everything I do, I want to be to benefit her, and I didn't want to send her to a trot, and I also don't want to teach her that, I'm going to, ask you to go forward and then pull you back into the walk. So this direction, again, going left, I still, even right now, am not getting the best stretch. She feels very, took a little funny step there. She still feels kind of like a banana to me going right. She really wants to just fall to the right, go right, and going left. So here's where I really kind of got after her, and then I pulled her back there, and that was kind of the moment, like, I really wish that hadn't happened. We all make mistakes, certainly. But I want her to be forward. But at this point, like, I knew I still had about a week left of walking, and I was like, oh, no, don't trot. So that was kind of the thing. That's the thing I would most like to fix about this session is, to not ask so much if I know she can't trot. It's the reason I don't lunge is because, if she got playful on the lunge line, I don't want to just yank her up or try to force her to stop, because that doesn't tend to work well. The idea when we lunge horses is to get them really relaxed, and if they need to go forward and they need to canter, then that's fine. We're not just going to, pull them back. Generally sending them on and letting them get a little tired and then asking them to come back is like the most helpful way to get horses to just settle into the work. We're not going to get after them for being a little bit playful, but for Tia right now, that's lunging is definitely not an option yet. But I do love the lunging work for her. And especially right now, if she weren't a horse that had an injury and she was just coming back to work, I would be doing lunging more and less riding, because I want to keep my weight off of her, and I want her to build. I would, ideally it'd be nice for her to build a little bit more muscle on the ground before I got back on her. But for her, rehab plan, again, that's not really an option with the old suspensory injury that we have. But at this point, she's been coming back from it great. We haven't had any inflammation. We haven't had any lameness. So knock on wood, I'm going to do it right now. Everything's been coming along really beautifully for her. It's exciting to have her back in work again. So yeah, I think she just looks a little bit more relaxed, a little bit happier to be in the stretch going right. One of the things I notice is that when I tend to take up a little contact there, when she brings her head up, I still tend to kind of, you can see my elbows are almost behind my back a little bit. What I would really love to see myself do, and what I've become much more conscious about, is really picking my hands straight up and keeping my elbows in front of my body. So that way I'm just like making it very clear that I'm not pulling back to take up the contact. I'm really just raising my hands to maintain it. And that's because I don't want her to think, about curling back. I always want her to be thinking like stretch that neck out longer and longer and longer. So I don't want to pull back to maintain the contact. I want to just lift my hands straight up. So I've been really conscious lately about my elbows staying in front of my body and not so much. You can see there, like my hands are almost in the saddle. Oh, there we go. Look at me picking up my reins and putting my elbows forward. But, my hands do tend to be a little bit too far back here. So this actually is something that Tia used to do a lot. When I'd put my leg on, she'd get really crabby and she would actually just stop. And it got to the point, actually, she would like stand up and rear, or she'd kick. She didn't want to go forward. So it seemed to be, let's see, where did we get with this? It seemed to be a little bit heat related, that she was uncomfortable in her body. She's on a raspberry leaves for that, and it actually seems to make a big difference. Not so much personality-wise, like if she's in heat, you can still you can tell. But it seems to have taken just the edge off a little bit. But her heat cycles were really crazy this summer. Like she would just stand out in the paddock and scream, and she'd be by herself and she'd just kick out. And so you could tell she was uncomfortable. And so riding obviously was not helpful for her. Like she was very, anti me being on her back. And so once we figured that out, We put her on the raspberry leaves. I think also her saddle fit issue was a problem because her saddle was staying a little bit too far back for her. And, kind of putting pressure on the areas where, closer towards her ovaries and that sort of thing. So I haven't noticed this behavior a whole lot in the new saddle. Like I said, at this point, we hadn't been under saddle very long, and she was mostly happy to go forward. I think that was a little bit of the remnants of, I think if she's a little bit uncomfortable, she thinks it's really going to hurt. And the saddle has been fitting her really well, so we haven't had that issue. But certainly another, health concern we had with her was ulcers. So we treated that as well, and it was really, really helpful. So, whenever she tells me something like that, she pins her ears, she stops. For her, it is pain. It's just listening to her and then trying to figure out what it is. Whether the saddle just needs another adjustment because it's been a little while, or it's something else like ulcers going on and we need to treat it and keep her happy. So, overall, honestly, I'm just so pleased with where she has come and how quickly she's come back. In our first trot session, I just couldn't believe it. We stepped off into the trot and she just gave me this beautiful, bouncy forward trot stretch. And I was like, oh dear Lord, this is so beautiful. It was just so nice to just have her come right into it and give me this wonderful stretch that we honestly hadn't really achieved until last fall. So I hadn't been getting that feeling under saddle for most of the time that I was doing this work with her. It took us a long time. But it just goes to show you, once they learn it and once it feels good for them, that's what they want to do. So it's been incredible bringing her back because all this in hand work has been wonderful. Having a correctly fitting saddle has been wonderful. And she's just fallen right back into it. So again, there's a few things that I am, being conscious about and would love to change about this. And, that's the part of the process. I always, it's easy to give yourself a hard time that you wish you were a better trainer, a better rider. I always say I wish that I could be the rider or trainer I'll be in 10 years for this horse. But it's part of the learning process. We do make mistakes. And, as long as we're, most focused on their health, their happiness, their care, these mistakes do happen. And it's just sometimes part of the process. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. But again, I'm just very pleased with her and very happy to be back riding her again. So thank you so much. And I hope to send another submission in for you all very soon.